The PMP exam treats emotional intelligence as one of the most important leadership skills a project manager can develop. It is the difference between a manager who reacts to problems and a leader who anticipates and influences outcomes. In this video, I'll break down Task 14 from Domain 1. Promote team performance through emotional intelligence. We'll cover the two ECO enablers, the Goleman framework that PMI uses as its foundation, how personality indicators support EI in practice, and how Agile teams apply emotional intelligence at every level. I'll finish with a practice question. This is the final task in Domain 1. Let's wrap it up properly. Task 14 sits in Domain 1, People, which makes up 42% of the PMP exam. The task statement is, promote team performance through the application of emotional intelligence. There are two enablers in the ECO. First, assess behavior through the use of personality indicators. Second, analyze personality indicators and adjust to the emotional needs of key project stakeholders. Two enablers, but heavily tested. PMI considers emotional intelligence so important that it is the final task in the people domain. Let's build the foundation first. Project managers spend most of their time working with people, not with tools, schedules, or documents. The PMP exam reflects this. When a question describes a stakeholder reacting emotionally, frustration, resistance, anxiety, hostility, the answer almost always involves emotional intelligence. The exam tests whether you can recognize emotions, regulate your own reactions, and respond to others in ways that build trust and move the project forward. Candidates who try to solve emotional situations with logic, process, or escalation consistently pick the wrong answer. PMI is clear on this. Emotional intelligence is not a soft skill. It is a leadership competency that can be learned, measured, and applied, and the exam expects you to demonstrate it. Emotional intelligence, often abbreviated EI or EQ, is the ability to recognize emotions in yourself and in others, understand what they mean, and use that awareness to guide your thinking and behavior. The concept was popularized by psychologist Daniel Goleman in the 1990s, and PMI uses his framework as the foundation for Task 14. The critical insight is this: EI is not an inborn trait. It is a learned skill. Project managers can develop it through deliberate practice, and the exam expects you to know how. This separates EI from personality, which is relatively stable. Personality describes who someone is. Emotional intelligence describes how skillfully someone navigates emotions, their own and others. PMI's view of emotional intelligence is built on Goleman's 5 components, and the exam tests scenarios that map directly to them. Component 1, self-awareness, recognizing your own emotions in real time and understanding how they affect your decisions. Component 2, self-regulation, controlling your emotional reactions and responding thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Component 3, motivation, driving toward goals beyond external rewards with optimism and commitment. Component 4, empathy, understanding the emotions of others and seeing situations from their perspective. Component 5, social skills, building relationships, communicating effectively, and influencing others. Self-awareness is the foundation. Without it, the other 4 components cannot function. You cannot regulate emotions you do not recognize. You cannot empathize from a place of self-knowledge if you do not know yourself. The first enabler is assess behavior through the use of personality indicators. Personality indicators are tools that reveal how individuals tend to think, communicate, and react. The two most commonly tested on the PMP exam are MBTI, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which classifies people across 4 dimensions, including introversion versus extroversion and thinking versus feeling, and DISC, which assesses dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness as behavioral patterns. On the exam, you do not need to memorize the categories of either tool. What matters is understanding why a project manager uses them, to anticipate how team members will respond in different situations, tailor communication to each individual, and prevent conflict by recognizing personality-driven friction before it escalates. The second enabler is analyze personality indicators and adjust to the emotional needs of key project stakeholders. This goes beyond assessment, it is about action. Once you understand a stakeholder's personality and emotional state, you adjust your approach accordingly. An analytical stakeholder needs data and structured information. An expressive stakeholder needs energy and human connection. A stakeholder under stress needs reassurance before they need solutions. On the exam, this enabler appears in scenarios where different stakeholders react differently to the same news. The correct answer is rarely a single message broadcast to everyone. It is tailored communication that respects each stakeholder's individual emotional needs. Self-awareness on the exam is not abstract, it is observable behavior. A self-aware project manager recognizes their own emotional triggers, situations, or stakeholders that consistently provoke a strong reaction. They understand their blind spots, areas where their judgment is less reliable. They reflect on their own behavior after difficult conversations and deliberately seek feedback from peers, mentors, and team members. On the exam, when a scenario describes a project manager who is overwhelmed, frustrated, or losing composure, the correct first step is almost always self-awareness. Pause, recognize the emotion, and regulate the response before acting. Reacting from raw emotion is the wrong PMI behavior. Empathy and social skills are the outward-facing components of EI, and they generate the most exam questions. Empathy means actively listening to understand, not to respond. It means asking what is driving a stakeholder's resistance rather than dismissing it. It means reading nonverbal cues, body language, tone, silence, and interpreting them in context. Social skills translate empathy into action, building rapport before delivering difficult news, managing conflict by addressing emotions first and content second, influencing without authority through credibility in relationships. On the exam, when a stakeholder is upset, the answer is rarely to argue, defend, or escalate. The correct response is empathic engagement. Understand first, then respond. Agile teams depend on emotional intelligence even more than predictive teams, and the exam tests this heavily. Self-organizing teams require members to navigate emotions without a manager mediating every interaction. Daily stand-ups expose interpersonal friction that leaders must address with empathy, not authority. Retrospectives are where EI shows up most visibly. A retrospective without psychological safety produces nothing useful. Team members will not surface real problems if they fear judgment. The Scrum Master's emotional intelligence determines whether the team can have honest, productive conversations. Servant leadership, a core Agile principle, is fundamentally an EI competency. You cannot serve a team you do not understand emotionally. On the exam, Agile leadership scenarios are almost always EI scenarios in disguise. 3 traps that catch candidates on EI questions. Trap 1. Choosing escalation when an emotional response would resolve the situation. The exam consistently rewards direct engagement with emotions over passing them up the chain. Trap 2. Solving emotional problems with logic. When a stakeholder is upset, providing more data or clarifying scope rarely works. The emotion must be addressed first, then the substance. Trap 3. Treating all stakeholders the same. Enabler 2 is explicit. Project managers must adjust to individual emotional needs. A communication approach that works for one stakeholder may completely fail with another. The exam tests whether you recognize this and tailor your approach. Emotional intelligence is built deliberately, not absorbed by accident. The exam expects you to know how project managers develop EI in themselves and in their teams. First, seek honest feedback. Self-perception is often inaccurate. 360-degree feedback, peer reviews, and direct conversations with team members reveal blind spots. Second, reflect after difficult interactions. What emotion was I feeling? How did it affect my behavior? What would I do differently? Third, practice deliberately. Self-regulation, empathy, and influence are skills that improve with conscious effort. Fourth, model EI behavior for the team. When team members see leaders manage emotions skillfully, they develop the same competencies. On the exam, the correct answer about developing team EI is usually modeling, coaching, and creating a safe environment, not training programs alone. Let's recap Task 14. Promote team performance through emotional intelligence. Enabler 1. Assess behavior through personality indicators like MBTI and DISC. Enabler 2. Analyze the indicators and adjust to each stakeholder's emotional needs. Remember Goleman's 5 components. Self-awareness is the foundation. Self-regulation controls reactions. Motivation drives commitment. Empathy understands others. Social skills build influence. On the exam, when emotions are present, address emotions first. When stakeholders differ, tailor your approach. When you feel triggered, pause and regulate before responding. Emotional intelligence is not optional for project managers. It is the leadership skill PMI tests most consistently across the people domain. Congratulations! With Task 14, you've completed Domain 1, People. That's all 14 tasks covering 42% of the PMP exam. From conflict management in Task 1 to emotional intelligence in Task 14, the people domain is built around one core principle. Project managers lead people, and people lead through emotional intelligence. If you followed this series from the beginning, you now have a complete framework for the people domain and a strong foundation for process and business environment, where many of the same principles reappear in different contexts. Let's test your understanding with an exam-style question. Question: during a critical project review meeting, a key stakeholder becomes visibly frustrated and starts criticizing the project team's recent decisions in front of senior leadership. The project manager has prepared detailed data showing that the decisions were sound. What should the project manager do first? Option A. Present the data immediately to demonstrate that the decisions were correct and defend the team's work. Option B. Acknowledge the stakeholders' concerns, ask what is driving their frustration, and propose to discuss the details after the meeting. Option C. Politely interrupt the stakeholder and request that concerns be raised through the proper change control process. Option D. Escalate the behavior to the project sponsor and request that the stakeholder be removed from future review meetings. The correct answer is B. This is a textbook emotional intelligence scenario. The stakeholder is reacting emotionally, visibly frustrated, criticizing publicly. The PMI-aligned response is to address the emotion first before the substance. Acknowledging the concern shows empathy. Asking what is driving the frustration applies self-awareness. The PM recognizes that data alone will not resolve an emotional reaction. Proposing a follow-up conversation shifts the discussion to a productive setting without dismissing the stakeholder. Why not A? Presenting data while someone is emotionally activated almost always escalates the conflict. Logic does not address emotion. Why not C? Citing process during an emotional moment feels dismissive and damages the relationship. Why not D? Escalation skips the project manager's own responsibility to manage emotions and stakeholders directly. B is correct because it addresses the emotion first, then makes space for substantive discussion. That's your complete guide to PMP Task 14, Promote Team Performance Through Emotional Intelligence. And that completes Domain 1, People, all 14 tasks. Subscribe for more PMP exam prep. More content coming soon to help you pass on your first attempt. See you in the next video.